And President Biden today reacting to the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. He congratulated Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and called for an end to the war in Gaza. Here's Biden's remarks from Berlin, Germany.
Move on, move toward a ceasefire in Gaza. Make sure that we move in the direction that we're going to be in a position to make things better for the whole world. It's time for this war to end and bring these hostages home.
Speaking on the tarmac, Biden said he's hopeful about a potential ceasefire in the Middle East. He'll be sending Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Israel in the coming days to discuss a post-war plan. This will be Blinken's 11th trip to the region since the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack. In a statement today, Biden said, quote, "This is a good day for Israel, for the United States, and for the world." And NTD's international correspondent, Arian Pazdar, has more on this breaking story.
People in a city in northern Israel celebrating on Thursday night. This comes after a Gaza operation which targeted 3 terrorists. Among the dead, the leader of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar.
Yahya Sinwar is the Osama bin Laden of his time.
Sinwar is the chief architect of the October 7th terror attacks on Israel. He was named leader of Hamas after Israel killed the previous leader, Ismail Haniyeh. The State Department commented on Sinwar's time with Hamas, saying he
was a brutal, vicious terrorist responsible for the death of American citizens, Israelis, and civilians from more than 30 countries across the world.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also commented on the death of the Hamas leader.
The perpetrator of the most terrible massacre in the history of our people since the Holocaust, the mass murderer who murdered thousands of Israelis and kidnapped hundreds of our citizens.
Netanyahu added that the fighting cannot stop. He said Israel won't rest until all remaining hostages are returned home. But the U.S. sees this as the perfect chance to reach a ceasefire deal now.
Hamas is decimated and its leadership is eliminated. This moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza.
Sinwar was a massive obstacle to peace in the day after in Gaza. And now that that obstacle has been removed, President Biden looks forward to talking to Prime Minister Netanyahu about how we secure the return of the hostages, an end to the war.
Dozens of people demonstrated at the Israeli embassy in Jordan, a country that lies right next to Israel. They showed support for Hamas and Palestinians in Gaza.
Hamas will stay strong with or without Sinwar and will be tough on Israel. Hamas will not die.
There was no immediate comment from Hamas on the death of its leader. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
And joining us now live to discuss the death of the Hamas leader is retired Navy Commander John Wells. Commander Wells, thank you so much for joining us in studio.
Steve, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, Commander. So Israel's military is saying that it has killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Many consider him to be the mastermind behind those October 7th deadly attacks, killing over 1,200 Jews and others. I'm going to play a soundbite here. This is from an Israeli intelligence officer who spent over 180 hours interrogating Sinwar. Let's take a look.
For him, it doesn't matter if it is a boy, a child, a woman. He wants to kill Jews, by machete. That was his dream. He told me that the best is to kill them by machete. That was during the interrogation.
Commander, how significant is the taking out of Yahya Sinwar, not just for Israel, but the Middle East and beyond?
Taking out one person is in itself not significant, but looking at the cumulative effect of what Israel has done to Hamas, as well as Hezbollah, it's a significant effect. You're going to be playing a little bit of whack-a-mole here. There could be some folks coming up, but they're not going to have the competence, the experience, or the knowledge that people like Sinwar does. So I think overall, from a strategic standpoint, it is very significant.
Now, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he's going to be making his way to that region in the coming days. He said the U.S. will, quote, redouble its efforts with partners to end this conflict. Is this the beginning of the end of the war in Gaza, do you think?
I don't think so. Look, there's only two ways that we're going to end that war. One is for Hamas to run up the white flag, which I don't understand why they haven't done that. They should. And two is just to basically take them all out. And I think Israel's committed to doing the latter if Hamas is not going to surrender.
And to your previous point, the opening question was, how significant is this? You mentioned it is one person. It is only one person. Although he was at the top, how challenging is it when you're fighting this ideological war, essentially, where people have been radicalized? Who's the next man up, and how challenging is it to really curb this?
Well, it is challenging. I don't know who the next man up is going to be, but there is going to be one. But again, as I said, they don't have the knowledge or the experience, and they're going to be easier to take out. Look, eventually, this will become a war of attrition, and it's a war that Israel is going to win. They've effectively won it now. The only thing that they need to really declare peace and get out of there, is to have the hostages released. I think if Hamas had any common sense, that they would release the hostages and say, guys, we've had it. We want to go home. Let you go home too.
Psychologically, for the healing and the closure process for the nation, how big of a deal? We had to wait many years to finally see Osama bin Laden taken out after the 9/11 attacks. How big of a deal is this for the nation of Israel and the people?
Well, it's a very big deal. They've got to be able to end this, and like I said, there's only two ways to end it. I think psychologically, they have to look at punishing Hamas to the point where they just cannot rise again. And look, we did that in Germany in World War II. We did it in Japan. I mean, we could think about the Hamas as being very willing to go die and so on and so forth, try to get their 72 virgins. The Japanese felt the same way about dying for the emperor would send them to paradise as well. Eventually, when we crushed them, they complied. They went to peace, and today they're one of our strongest allies. So, but I can't predict the future. I don't know how it's going to go. All I know is that once Hamas is done, then we got to do, or Israel has to do, the Houthis. They've got to do Hezbollah, and at the root of it is Iran. And sooner or later, we're going to have to knock out the root cause, which is Iran.
Now, in the backdrop of all of this, you still have many hostages that from that October 7th attack in Gaza. Earlier today, President Biden spoke with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you expect anything to come out of this in terms of releasing some of those hostages? And what may we expect in retaliation from Hamas?
Well, if you think rationally, then yes, they would release the hostages. And as I said, just kind of say, guys, we're done. Let's go home. But they don't think rationally. So I suspect that there will continue to be missile strikes. There's just going to be less of them because they have less missiles to fire. There's going to continue to be terrorist attacks. And look, the thing's just going to keep on going, Steve. I wish I had the magic answer. I don't. And I don't think anybody else does. I do think that we should start taking a look at the fact that they have American hostages, and we should demand from Hamas release those. They think that airstrikes from the Israelis is bad. Think about what it would be from B-52s, B-1s, B-2s.
Commander Wells, really appreciate your insights on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. And here in the United States, former President Trump is in New York participating in a long-standing tradition in American politics that dates back to 1945. That's the Al Smith dinner. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Martinez, brings us more.
Former President Donald Trump is in the state of New York this Thursday night to participate in the Al E. Smith Dinner, a fundraising event for Catholic charities that has been hosted by the Archbishop of New York since 1945 in honor of four-time New York State Governor Al Smith. Former President Donald Trump will speak at the dinner, and comedian Jim Gaffigan will be the MC for the night. Vice President Kamala Harris declined to participate, breaking with tradition. Since 1960, when John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon were speakers, the dinner has been traditionally one of the last events both major presidential candidates share a stage before the election. In 2016, former President Donald Trump and Secretary Hillary Clinton exchanged humorous jabs.
You notice there is no teleprompter here tonight, which is probably smart. They're hard to keep up with, and I'm sure it's even harder when you're translating from the original Russian.
Hillary accidentally bumped into me, and she very civilly said, "Pardon me." And I very politely replied, "Let me talk to you about that after I get into office."
And in 2012, then candidate Mitt Romney and President Barack Obama did the same.
It's nice to finally relax and to wear what Ann and I wear around the house.
Mitt is his middle name. I wish I could use my middle name.
The dinner has traditionally allowed for a more lighthearted exchange in between both presidential candidates right before the general election. Cardinal Dolan, the Archbishop of New York, expressed disappointment that Vice President Harris declined to participate, citing conflicts with her campaign schedule. A major presidential candidate has not declined to participate in 40 years. Instead, Vice President Harris will send a pre-recorded message. Vice President Kamala Harris's snub of the traditional dinner has drawn criticism from Catholic groups, and the Trump campaign has previewed that his supporters will not be disappointed by his performance. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Vice President Harris is campaigning in the battleground state of Wisconsin today, with stops in Milwaukee and La Crosse highlighting key issues that she hopes to change. A polling average from the Washington Post showing her holding a slight lead in that state. Here she is speaking just moments ago.
There was a time that generations of Americans could count on the American dream, but for far too many these days, it is just out of reach. So we will deal with the housing supply, and I will commit to creating a $25,000 down payment assistance so you can, for the first-time home buyers, just get your foot in the door. We will also lower costs on everything from healthcare to groceries, including taking on corporate price gouging, which I've done before, and I will do again. One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do. And it is my pledge to you that when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom nationwide, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
Harris also vowing to restore reproductive freedom, greater access to abortion, calling for a return to the protections of Roe v. Wade. Harris is set to arrive in Green Bay tonight before continuing her campaign in Grand Rapids, Michigan, tomorrow. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.